the loyalty shift, it's not really about loyalty programs. It's about recognition. People don't want points. They want to feel known. They want friction removed. They want someone to say, we see you, we remember you.
Social platforms are going to be the new OTAs.
Whoever owns the moment of intent controls the bookings.
Are we going to get a bubble? There are thousands of hotels with hundreds of rooms that still need to be filled.
We're going to be focused on this independent, cool lifestyle and luxury, but I have to market like a bank.
I think that we can give our 2 cents into the stories that are going on.
Will be in your ears and on your screens every Friday morning.
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
This is the gold, bro. This is the gold.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your favorite podcast of the week, of the month, of the year, of the millennia, of the world.
Episode number
20.
Yeah, it's a milestone.
Yeah, it is. It is.
We made it.
You know, I was thinking before we dive into the news this week, we are down a man. Our dear Benjamin is sick, horribly sick, apparently, and so we wish him well. But Edwin and Scott, I thought it'd be fun to just do a quick little recap. We're 20 episodes in. You know, most podcasts, at least this is the quote that people like to quote about podcasts. I don't know if it's actually true, but people say like 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 7. So we're at episode 20, almost 21. 3x, right? Ahead of most. How are we feeling, Edwin? What about you, man? How's it been doing podcasting? You've been active on LinkedIn for a long time, but this is a totally new medium for you. How you feeling?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. You know, I remember saying on one of the first podcasts that I stand in front of 100, 200 people in auditoriums, in pre-openings, in whatever, smaller teams, larger teams, and all of a sudden, when I talked on the camera, those first episodes, it was a really weird experience because you don't see your audience, right? It's a very different medium, or it was a very different medium for me versus having that physical context and understanding who you're speaking to. But it's been great. I've been loving it. I think the conversations have been fantastic. I love that we have different opinions and agree sometimes and disagree sometimes, and so it's been a very cool experience. So, thanks for having me.
Well, you've been a huge ad. I think it's helpful to have a little bit of European diversity in the mix, right? Which is wonderful. And Scott, I want to go to you, man. You've been creating content for freaking forever, as we've talked about many times. But I believe this is your first go at like a podcast, like a true podcast that you've been on every podcast, but a podcast that you're a regular contributor and host to. What's it been like for you, and how is it different than what you do on Instagram, what you might do when you appear as a guest on a show? Any insights or musings?
Yeah, so I've wanted to do a podcast for many years, and the problem I have is doing the infrastructure of a podcast, the editing, the clips, the consistency, which is why typical podcasts don't make it past number 7. I feel, because it's consistency. It's hard to keep things going. So yeah, I've been on 100 podcasts, hundreds, and I like this because it allows me to. I love long form storytelling, and I love showcasing my personal brand in a long form sort of way. So for me, this is heaven. I love it. I love not doing it alone because this is the same reason I'd rather speak on a panel than doing a keynote. Because I think riffing off other people and just that whole dialogue on stage is so much better than just giving a keynote up there, rah and yourself for 45 minutes. I think this is so much better because, as you said, everybody has their own opinion. We're all in the same world, but we're very different
backgrounds.
And by the way, if you guys do meet tonight, if you don't take a picture, it didn't happen. So we have to. But I love it. I think it's great. I think, and it's very nice to know that the typical podcast doesn't make it past 7 episodes, and we're up to number 20. So that gives us encouragement.
It does.
Thanks for being the wonderful host, Zach. You're always keeping us together. I thought we would interfere with each other, but you've been holding us straight.
I think Zach should wear a referee outfit, like I think it would be good for him.
Probably.
Blow the whistle,
Probably.
the red card, yellow card, like.
You're amazing. I think it's been really
you guys
good.
are too kind. You're too kind. And for our listeners, in case you missed that, Edwin, I've invited Edwin out tonight. Edwin is in my city. We've been talking about this. Can't remember how much of this actually makes it into the final episode every
Since
week.
episode 7.
Edwin and I have been talking about trying to get together because he's been in DC many times over the last several months here. So hopefully we make it happen tonight. I will be in the city after the children go to sleep. So if Edwin can stay up and meet me, that'll be. We will take a picture. We will take a picture and we'll share it in the show.
Do you make it out quite often? Because seeing how you have little kids at home.
I make it out after 8:30, 9 p.m. if I go out. So basically, my windows are like, during the day. Well, during the day is hard because I work a lot, as we all do. So it's usually like if I'm going to meet up with anybody, it has to happen like after 8:30, which is tough, on a weeknight, right? Typically, right? For those of us that, go to sleep like myself. Well, I've been staying up a lot later than I would like. But in general, I'm way more of like an early worm than a night owl. Early bird gets the worm. That's what it is. I was like, that did not sound right. Anyhow, so we will see. We will take a photo if it happens. Hopefully it does. But let's get into the stories of the week, guys. We've got lots to talk about, and I want to start with this story that I think just plays into many of the things that we've been talking about over the last several weeks here. But Scott, I want to go to you on this. There was this fun story about how hotels, and this was from Skift. This was a panel discussion, really a report on a panel from IHIF in Berlin this week. And the essence of the story were these panelists talking about how hotels are facing a structural shift in how travel decisions are made. And it's happening much earlier in the discovery process, the booking process, than it historically has. So this event, the International Hospitality Investment Forum in Berlin, executives from Hilton, Marriott, TUI, and others acknowledge that discovery is moving away from traditional search and into social platforms, recommendations, and AI-driven tools. Travelers are no longer starting with a hotel. They're starting with an experience. So searches like best diving in Africa are replacing brand-led queries at huge margins. So they're forcing hotel companies to rethink how and when they engage potential guests. Most of the time, hotel budget is spent kind of at that consideration or decision stage, right, of intent. So, best hotels in Africa in this example versus like just best diving in Africa more generally. So it's forcing hotels to think a little bit more critically about where to invest, where to prioritize from a channel perspective, and it's totally just changing their revenue strategy. So TUI noted that roughly half of its experiences are now booked pre-arrival, which is remarkably different than historically. Usually experiences would be booked once somebody checked into the hotel, right? They're at the front desk and the concierge is telling them about all the experiences. Now over half are happening before the guest even checks in, before they arrive. At the same time, loyalty programs are evolving to deliver more immediate in-stay value, particularly for younger travelers who prioritize convenience and instant gratification. So long story short here is that experiences, which is not new, is just growing dramatically in popularity, but it's moved past like trendy and it's now hugely influential from a revenue perspective. So Scott, I want to go to you here first. This inspiration is now happening outside the hotel ecosystem, outside of essentially the channels and the real estate that hotels own, like their websites, right? Maybe even like their OTA listings. But this is moving to social, right? It's been moving to social. It feels weird to even say it is because it's been for a very, very, very long time. This isn't like new, but top executives in the big boy seats, right, in the big girl seats are realizing that, oh my gosh, we need to be in places where demand is created, where discovery is found. And that really is where we need to be investing from a marketing perspective. So I want your thoughts on this, Scott. What does this actually mean for a hotel brand to own demand going forward? What are your thoughts here?
So first off, Edwin, am I correct in, did Zach say TUI instead of TUI like 3 times?
TUI.
So TUI is a massive
TUI's
brand outside
German,
the US.
right? Yeah, I was like, This doesn't feel.
I don't even think it's an abbreviation of anything. I don't
Guys
know.
are new, okay? It's not an abbreviation. TUI. If anyone from
All right,
TUI is listening, forgive me.
So
Thank you.
getting to the story, I mean, like, it's so ridiculous that we're even having this conversation, because isn't this what, especially me and Ben in our positions, have been preaching to brands for years? I mean, the shift is not here. The shift has been here for years. But so now the dinosaurs wake up and ITB, they come out on the panel and they finally admit it. Okay, so what are you going to do? Like, the biggest shift has been here for many, many years. You know, hotels are no longer where travel decision starts. You know, that's gone. It's been completely gone for years. You know, travelers are starting with social, with AI, you know, even group chats, you know, like, just what the industry is finally admitting, and they're late to this, is discovery is happening outside of their control. And that's uncomfortable for them because they've been so reliant on the old school method, the dinosaur way. And they built their entire strategy around capturing demand, not creating it. And now the demand is being created somewhere else. And you know, it's getting so much more serious that the funnel moved, it didn't shrink. It moved earlier, but if you're not showing up when someone is dreaming about, as you said, best diving in Africa or coolest boutique in Lisbon, you know, you're irrelevant. You don't even exist in their mind yet. Yeah. And it's funny because luxury is hitting the hardest, and also they have the biggest opportunity at the same time. But the funny thing is, luxury will correct this immediately, and mid-scale and the lower end properties, they'll sit there and just spin their wheels in the mud.
I want to tell you a little bit about Journey. Not because Journey makes this episode of This Week in Hospitality and every episode of This Week in Hospitality possible, but also because I'm on the founding team there. And I want to share a little bit about why I joined Journey, what we're building, and really extend an invitation to you all to, first and foremost, become Journey members yourself, and then also consider applying to be a part of the Journey Alliance. So let me explain very, very quickly what all of this means and why you should care about it. So first and foremost, the reason I joined the founding team at Journey is because I believe something pretty deeply, that the best places to stay in the world typically aren't the biggest ones. It's typically not the flagged properties. They're smaller boutique properties that evoke a sense of deep soul, character, story, right? We've all had these travel experiences where we stay in this property where we feel like the operator, the staff knows us, right? We feel taken care of. The temperature in the room is just right. They saw that we were struggling with our bags and we had couple kids with us, right? And they offered to entertain the kids with some fun little toy that they had stashed behind the front desk, right? We've all had experiences like this. And those experiences are notably different than the experiences that you might get at a standard Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt hotel. The reason why we built Journey is because we believe that the best operators in the world are not properly equipped to compete in this evolving, ever-changing environment that we live in today. I mean, you hear buzzwords all the time, right? What is AI going to do to the little guy? And we believe that actually AI empowers the little guy. AI empowers boutique and independent properties in a way that historically they haven't been empowered. We believe, like, for the very first time, these properties with soul can actually compete in a very meaningful way against flagged and more traditional properties. So what is Journey? If you're not familiar, Journey is a loyalty and guest intelligence platform built specifically for independent hotels, residences, and high-touch hospitality brands. I like to tell folks that Journey becomes your partner in all things AI, your partner in enabling guests to make it a very easy choice, quite frankly, to stay at your property, right? The best independent properties versus the properties where they might have status, right? Or get points or get rewards at staying at, those being, the chain hotels, of course. So what Journey does is we become your official loyalty program. We enable travelers to earn points and rewards by staying at your property, right? And it's not really just about the points. What it's really about is helping give consumers a reason to choose the boutique property, right? And make it an easy choice. So they're not giving up, status that they have with Marriott. They're not giving up the opportunity for a great room at a Ritz-Carlton. They get to pick your hotel, which is the better hotel, and also still earn status points and rewards for picking you. We believe very strongly that the best hotels in the world, the best residences of the world, are ones built by operators who care about the story of the place, right? And so we want to help you tell that story. We want to help give you the intelligence to make every guest your best guest. We're living in a dynamic world where for the very first time, you truly can personalize every experience, every part of the stay down to the individual traveler. And Journey is your partner in helping make all of that possible. Now, Journey is very curated, right? We really do want to partner with the best. And so we don't take on any hotel that asks to join our program. In fact, we turn down about 60-70% of folks who do apply to be a part of the alliance. But if you're listening to this episode today, if you like This Week in Hospitality and you have an independent property that you believe has soul and a story to tell, we'd love for you to apply to be a part of the Journey Alliance. You can do so at journey.com/alliance. And if you reference that you are a listener and a fan of This Week in Hospitality, we're going to move you to the top of the curation review list. And then also, if you are accepted into the Alliance and you join the Alliance program, we've got a special gift and really exciting opportunity to share with you for those who qualify and join the Alliance. So if you want to learn more about what we're building at Journey and why we're building it and why we believe now is the time to build a program that enables you and empowers you with deeper guest insights, right? Doesn't hoard guest data, which the traditional OTAs do, right? And the traditional loyalty programs do, then I want to invite you to check out journey.com/alliance. You can connect with one of my team members there, or, you can just comment on this episode wherever you're listening to this podcast, or find me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. But really encourage you to check out Journey. Again, Journey makes this episode and every episode of This Week in Hospitality possible. All right, guys, enjoy the show. Check out Journey and let me know what you think. Take care. Bye. Edwin, what do you think about this? I know it seems very, very obvious to folks like Scott, I think probably us as well, of this has been something that consumers have clearly indicated as the direction that they were heading with search, with discovery about where they wanted to travel and when they wanted to travel and why they want to travel there. But what's your thought on executives sitting down at the leading hotel brands of the world and admitting that this is something that they need to invest more seriously in?
I think I think a lot of these forums are often just a repeat of what's already happening, right? So I think a lot of these forums may have not have that much relevance anymore as they used to, because whatever they're bringing out is not news anymore. I mean, these forums used to be news breaking, but the news is out there now already. But listen, if this is what they say and what they're feeling, that's probably what's happening. We already know, and we talked about this many times, that exactly what Scott said. This has been happening for a long time. But I also think we need to make a distinction, right? Sometimes we jump on, and again, if this is what they see, these are the CEOs of the companies, they're going to be right? So they're not making this up. But this whole experience-driven search, I mean, hasn't travel always been like that? Hasn't it just shifted from a Lonely Planet guide and a brochure to something that just happens faster? I mean, the talk about that we were used to think about a hotel before we thought about the experience, it just doesn't add up to me. I mean, I never went to Thailand to think I want to go stay at that hotel and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do. I wanted to go to Thailand, I wanted to go to an island, and I wanted to go diving, and and then it took me a bit longer than nowadays with AI, but then I found my place, and then I found a hotel, and. Yeah. Hasn't searched with booking.com, isn't that the whole setup? If I want to go to Paris and I'm going to see an art show, I want to know where the art show is, and I'll look on a map, and then I'll put into booking.com that it's in Le Marais, and I'll find a hotel. So isn't that also already how it's been, right? Isn't that an experience-driven search already? So I'm not 100%, sold on that. This just is how the entire industry is working. I get it when you say I want to go diving or I want to go on a safari, but I never thought about booking the Four Seasons in the Serengeti, and then thought, okay, what am I going to see here? I want, if I want to go see the Big Five, I'll have researched the Big Five and then found a hotel to go with it. And the fact that people say, or this article said, or the panel said that it used to be very hotel driven. I mean, who's ever said I just want to go to the Four Seasons? You wanted to go to a Four Seasons, perhaps if you're a Four Seasons fan in Koh Samui, right? But then you went for the experience in that hotel, not for the room. So, and then we keep forgetting there are hundreds of thousands of business hotels, economy hotels, where this just doesn't, this has no story. It's become very, very busy in that section. But you don't go, even here in Washington, you don't choose your hotel necessarily for an experience, right? You have a location. It's about who you have a program with. So it doesn't add up for me for every single segment of this industry. I get it. If this is what they're saying, welcome to the table, but grain of salt in some areas.
Yeah, well said. I heard a little bit more of a cynical approach as I was discussing this with a friend around the reason that they're talking about this right now is because AI is this huge threat in the way that consumers are switching, right? Just Marriott, the Hiltons of the world, they've got really, really dialed in traditional paid search programs, traditional SEO programs, and they're seeing just massive, massive decline in demand from those channels. And so, right, what do you do when you see decline from traditional channels that you feel like you own? You start talking about like, oh, we got to go invest in this other
We're
thing.
on it, and here we are.
And so like, it's really more about like, no. It's just now the pain is felt a little bit more. AI search is still so freaking new, and it's really hard to understand like who's going to win, how you're going to win, what paid, if paid is even, I mean, ChatGPT rolled back ads, right? A couple weeks ago, they said that, hey, we're going to not launch ads after all yet. They likely still will, but they put the kibosh on that temporarily. So there's still just so much unknown about how to leverage these channels if you're one of these hotel giants or really any business. Whereas social, right, and this idea of like Reels and TikToks being movers and influencers of demand or of interest in a particular topic or category or location, everyone has known that like that's a thing and that consumers are moved by that. I think it's been hard for at the executive level to understand like, well, how do you effectively measure the ROI of that, right? So one of the things Ben talks about a lot, Scott, you talk a lot about, is like organic, right? We know organic does something, but it's really, really hard from like a business perspective to measure Scott's organic impressions on his reel to, nights booked, to heads in beds. It's very difficult. Now, if Scott pays and you do a bunch of like ad promos and you've set up your meta infrastructure appropriately, then you can know. But most people aren't that sophisticated, number one. And then number two, even if you pay, right, that's now a different kind of content. It's now paid content, not organic content. And so this is like something that, I feel so bad that Ben's not here because I know he would jump all over this because he's been preaching this for freaking forever. Yeah. But, right, like, I think the reality of the situation is that it's like, well, we're hurting on the search side. We're hurting on the traditional SEO side of things. Who knows what the hell we should be doing with AI search?
Well, I think that's another thing, Zach. Imagine if you're at the C-level, all the CEOs of companies that normally move quite slow in this whole tech world, right? It's not their business per se, right? Because hospitality is their business, but then have to work in a world with all the startups and all these big tech companies, smaller tech companies that say they're going to do something and then pull back, right? Are we going to do ads? We're going to not do ads. And by the time these bigger hospitality companies have thought about what they're going to do, there's a different direction, right? Or there are already a conversation going on with Booking.com within ChatGPT or whatever it is. It's also it must be very complicated for these large companies just to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a great example of this is we were talking about this at the end of last episode, right? Sora, OpenAI's video app, they just killed that. They walked away from $1 billion investment in Disney. I'm sure that conversations around that were happening for a very long time. Then one day, Sam wakes up and the team's like, you know what? F it. Like, let's just kill Sora. And they walked away from $1 billion investment
Yeah.
with a legacy dinosaur that probably did take a long time to figure out whether this was an
Right.
investment worth
So
making.
so I want to comment on what Edwin just said, and they're not tech people, they're hospitality people. But you know what? It's time they woke up, and it's time they do think like media companies and stop thinking about hospitality dinosaurs. You know, like if it's very simple. If you're not part of the inspiration phase, you're not part of the decision. And they need to get their head out of their butts and really step up to the plate and stop thinking like dinosaurs like they've done for the past 20 years. You have no idea the conversations that I have with people that are decision makers that just don't get it. Like, it's just unreal.
They're not social natives. Like they're not AI.
Of course not.
AI natives. And so like the idea that it's so impossible. Even like I even think about this in my own. Scott, you're like a legend here in my mind because you're so good at trying things and figuring things out. And like I think you've mentioned a couple times in this pod, you just download like every app, and like anytime there's a new social trend, you go, you check it out, and then you're active there and whatnot. For me, it's like I think about this with like TikTok, for example, right? Like I know it's this massive platform. My siblings use it, like my younger friends use it, religiously. I'm much more of a Reels guy, right? Like, and I'm perfectly content with my Instagram experience, but I have no desire to go to TikTok, even though I know from an algorithm's perspective, it's significantly better. But like as a consumer, it's just like, I don't know, like and if I feel that way about like two differentiating social apps with competitive like value props and offers, I can't imagine what an executive at one of these companies feels about. Wait, you want us to like invest tens of thousands of dollars and like hundreds of thousands of dollars in a content program for our hotel? Wait, what? Like it has to feel like you're speaking another language.
I'm gonna blow your mind right now. I had a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago, and this was a guy who makes decisions on marketing for a group that owns 40 hotels globally. I mean, they're a big group, big, significant luxury properties. And I asked him, I said, why aren't you guys on TikTok at all? He goes, oh, I don't care for the Chinese. I'm like, what difference does it make what you care for? I said, what different? And it's just, but these are the conversations that I'm having with you. And it's like, it's mind blowing. I could write a book based on what the conversations are. It's unreal.
Yeah.
How could somebody have that idea?
Yeah. No, that's hilarious. I guess my question maybe for Edwin, I'd love your thoughts on this in particular, is like, shouldn't this be the role that like the franchise, the flag plays? Like I think about, you said, Edwin, hospitality is their business, right? It's not tech, right? And then Scott pushed back on that a little bit, which I think was a good critique. Couldn't you make the case that like Marriott is not a hospitality company, right? Like
anymore,
right?
Right.
Now their business.
Well, they are, but it's become different. We talked about that many times. Yeah, I see.
It's become different. But point being, like at the end of the day, right? Marriott Bonvoy is trying to grow members. Marriott International, right, is trying to acquire the rights to particular investment properties that are 90%, I believe it is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, are independently owned and operated by people that are not Marriott, right? And so if that's the case, if that's true, then doesn't this investment in this next generation of consumer awareness, discovery, demand gen, et cetera, doesn't that fall on the flag to be the leaders of this for their?
Listen, I agree, and I know a lot of these companies have big teams already involved in tech. So maybe I didn't explain myself correctly, but there are large teams in these companies that are looking at tech, but they just move slower for the approval processes. Some of these
approval process.
AI companies, like you said, they wake up one day and tomorrow the deal's gone. And the speed is just so very different. And if you're even if there's big tech teams on these big giants, you always need to follow what's happening out there in tech because you're not developing your own tech. So you're always one pace behind. But if you're in negotiations and you're in a line and you're getting the approval processes and you're working and you're building your product towards an end goal, and that end goal just changes, or the market changes, or ChatGPT decides not to own part of the
Which
transaction,
happens all the time.
which happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
Then how do you then have to recover from that? It's just when I said it's not the primary business. I mean, there are heavy teams in there, but it's not. They're not developing tech, right? They're developing distribution.
Which maybe they should be like. Maybe like they should be developing like tech, right? Like
maybe
I was talking to a executive at I'll just say a large CRM company that powers most of Bonvoy, and what this individual was telling me was that it's a complete like mess. Like they have way less insight into their membership base than you would expect them to have as the loyalty program. Now, there are lots of reasons for that, right? But I was like jarred when I heard that. And I probably shouldn't say any more specifically about that story. But like, I think what I'm getting at here is maybe they should be developing their own technology. Like maybe that is the next frontier of these loyalty programs, right? Of these flags, is like having that in-house tech so that they can move more nimbly and not have to work through.
Yeah, but the problem is who's going to pay for that, right? Because all these big head offices are funded by fees from, then you need an entire new division.
They're just paying Salesforce. Like, I mean, I don't know. I know this is a much more complicated problem than we're making it sound here.
A separate episode.
That's a separate episode. That's
a whole episode.
For sure. But I think the takeaways I'm hoping folks will, I don't know, ponder on is like, obviously we've been talking about this for weeks now. There's something true about needing to create your own demand right now. And I think like that's like the conversation worth having with your teams, yourself, is like, how are we creating our own demand, right? How are we becoming less reliant on renting land, whatever that land might be, whether that land is Google, whether that land is, Meta, whether that land's even, maybe your own website, right? And how do you think just a little bit more critically about the mechanics and the strategy that's going to work for helping connect your brand, even in subtle ways, to folks higher up in that discovery process that aligns with what's unique about your respective market? And I think that's probably an exercise worth leaning into this week for folks. All right. I want to go to story number 2 here. So, Edwin, last week we talked about F&B having a moment, and F&B led properties, or F&B inspired properties being more attractive to investors. And then there was a story that published this week on the rush to build hotels around food. So it kind of went a layer deeper, I think, confirming some of the things that we talked about last week. But hotel companies, according to this article, are accelerating efforts to position food as a central driver of demand, not just as a supporting amenity. Minor Hotels, in particular, launched a new culinary-focused brand. They've launched a couple of them, actually, including the Wolseley Hotels.
Wolseley, yes.
Thank you.
Wolseley.
So Wolseley is a very, I'll explain in a second. Yeah, exactly. For those who don't know.
Yes, please. Clearly, my historical context on hotels and hotel groups.
Pure London. It's not a hotel.
Okay, it's not even great. I'm just being like called out here in every way, shape, and form on this episode, which is great.
Not at all.
It's good. No, I love a good humbling experience, right? What do I know? I just talk about hotels every week. I clearly don't know anything about them. But the Wolseley Hotels and Colbert Collection reflects a broader industry push to align with travelers seeking locally rooted, more experiential-driven stays. Across the industry, at least 15 culinary-themed hotel brands are now in development or operation, signaling a shift from lifestyle positioning toward food-led identity, which is the buzz term that folks are using now to describe this kind of category of stay. The financial rationale is becoming very clear. Hotels with high-profile restaurants, such as those tied to celebrity chefs or Michelin recognition, have been shown to generate a revenue premium, with some operators citing meaningful increases in room rates driven by strong F&B programs. At the same time, the model introduces complexity. F&B operations typically carry significantly lower margins than rooms. That's not news. We've all known that. With higher labor cost and cost of goods pressures, success is also, according to this article, highly dependent on location. So in markets with limited standalone dining options, hotel restaurants can become destinations in their own right. In more competitive cities, guests are more likely to dine off property, which kind of limits the impact of this whole move. Edwin, if food is becoming a core identity for hotels, not just an amenity, are we seeing a durable shift in how people choose where to stay? Or is this maybe just another cycle of hype and overbuilding around a particular trend? How do you think about this story and coupled with what we talked about last week?
So we just finished the last story by saying, how do hotels create their own demand? This is how, right? Because if nobody's thinking about rooms anymore, and it's about experiences, and let's take city hotels, all the experiences in cities you don't own, right? You don't own the museum visits, you don't own any of the sightseeing. So what can you do in a hotel? Create demand through a great restaurant. So I see this as something that sits perfectly well in the world we live in. The Wolseley is an interesting one. The Wolseley is a restaurant, world famous in London. Jeremy King, Chris Corbin, probably the best restaurateurs in London. They were always there. They were on the floor. It was a big, bold British restaurant. So it'd be interesting, because they sold, how this is going to move with a company like Minor Hotels into right, because it wasn't. I mean, it had a theme and had a concept. It wasn't like a Nobu. It was because of the hospitality, and it was very British, and it was because Jeremy King was at the front door seating his guests. I mean, that's the kind of restaurateurs they were. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But I don't agree in some of these bits of the story of saying that if there is a little competition that you fare better. I think for people going into Paris, for people going into London, for people going to New York, if you choose a hotel with a great restaurant, you will want to be there.
Yeah.
And if you're staying, like one of the properties I'm at, Washington, D.C. at the moment, I mean, I talked about this, so I don't want to have to repeat myself, but for anybody, so my apologies. But I see guests who say, I stay at this hotel because I can meet my friends, my colleagues, my family downstairs in the restaurant, because the restaurant has its own concept. So, and it's in a very competitive neighborhood. I think if you choose a hotel with a fantastic concept, and the concept makes sense, right, whether it's local or it's not local, like a Nobu, and I've run a Nobu hotel in a very competitive market, people will choose to dine with you once, but will want to be in an area with a lot of competition, because then they can go out on the second and third and the fourth day of their stay, if we're thinking about multiple stays, right? So if a one-night stay, then it becomes a bit different discussion. So I think it really depends on length of stay, but from a resort perspective, right? And I think we need to look at all aspects of hospitality. If you have a captive audience and a great restaurant and there's nothing else to do, yeah, sure. But that's been around for a long time. That's just that's not a science. It just means you can't go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
You're stuck in your hotel, for lack of better words. But even there, I would say if it's a heavy, if you're staying in a week in a destination, and you have a great hotel restaurant, and you can capture with a great concept, you can capture people once or twice, and you offer a lot of other great restaurants in the area, meaning a competitive market, so going against the grain of the story, I would choose that over having to drive an hour to go to another restaurant and saying, if I'm in my resort again for my fifth or my sixth night, right? Because then I get to experience the island. So listen, I see this as a I'm a food and beverage guy. It's my background. I come from restaurants and hotels. I think it's fantastic. I think it's the way to differentiate yourself, and I think we'll see either hoteliers come up with fantastic, really great, fun concepts that fit into local neighborhoods, or really good partnerships with local chefs who don't necessarily have the means of opening up yet another venue or overseeing 3 or 4 venues, because that's kind of difficult, but trusting a hotel with a great concept of your own as a chef or as a restaurateur to manage the property for you. So it's just going to liven up the entire business. It's great.
Scott, what do you think, man?
I think it's fascinating because it's both right and dangerous at the same time. Food has always been a driver, but now hotels are finally treating it like a primary revenue engine instead of a support function. That's smart, but the best hotels in the world already knew this. Here's the reality. Slapping a celebrity chef on a restaurant isn't just strategy, it's a tactic. And most hotels don't really understand the difference. Yeah, great restaurants can drive rate. They can drive demand. They can turn a hotel into a destination. but only if it's authentic, consistent, more importantly, and actually good, not just expensive. I see it all the time in South Florida, in Miami. You know, you go to a restaurant, you spend $200-300 a person, and it's just a really expensive experience. It's not really that good. The service is terrible. You know, I see it all the time. The margin conversation is where operators need to be honest with themselves. Okay, F&B is harder, more complex, less profitable than rooms, obviously. So if you're going to lean into that, you better be excellent, not average. And location is everything here. If you're in a market with strong external dining, like all these big cities have, your restaurant has to compete with the city, not just serve your guests. And that's a completely different level of execution. Where I think this is going is not just restaurants, it's experiences around food, tasting, storytelling, local sourcing, chef interaction, culture. That's where the real value is. Okay. Most hotels are about to overbuild around food without understanding how hard it is to win in that space.
What are you guys' thoughts, Edwin, since you have worked in both contexts, on the hotel needing to own the restaurant versus having a deep partnership with the restaurant? I know operators who have very strong feelings on one way or the other.
On both sides.
On both sides, yeah. What's your take, given your?
Listen, I don't think there's a magic formula to it, but I think partnerships are often a very good way forward. If you want the service and culture of the restaurant to match that of a hotel, because from a guest perspective, often they don't see the difference, right? So I've run a Nobu, which was a hotel where the restaurant was a franchise, right? And Nobu as a company didn't run the hotel. We ran the hotels ourselves, so directly with owners. But we had that great partnership of Nobu coming in. The support is always there, and it was still all our culture of the hotel, and we still took the Nobu culture within the brand. It was a partnership. We paid them a fee, and worked that way. This was in Ibiza. I've had a £10 million restaurant in London. Great partnership with Jason Atherton, Michelin star chef. He has tons of restaurants in London at the moment, and it was a massive, big, bold restaurant that sort of changed the scene of hotel dining at the time, is what the newspaper said. We just opened right in the right time, but he trusted us because he trusted the company and the brand to operate as a restaurant. He did the menus, he brought in the exec chef, he brought in the general manager. Those are often the things that work most in these kind of contracts. But then you can create a cohesive culture and service level between hotel and restaurant. And then there's always the ins and outs of who's going to do breakfast, because chefs never like to do breakfast because it's not a meaningful shift, right? But it does add a lot to the hotel's bottom line and to hotel experience. I think what could also work is that if you have a hotel and you do this because you want to create demand, you want to be interesting, you want to create local restaurants, is if you outsource it or give your space away completely to a local chef. If there is a separate entrance, for example, to the restaurant, but within a building, that you can really integrate your hotel and become a destination in itself by partnering with a local chef or somebody that makes sense of that neighborhood. So I think there's different models. It really depends on the area where you are.
Yeah.
But the fun thing, I think, is it opens all avenues. Mm. And if you're a hungry chef or you're a hungry restaurateur, but like I said earlier, if you don't have the means to open up a restaurant, and you have a big hotel behind you who can support on this, I mean, how wonderful is that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about last week a couple stories of, I think Ryan at the Annex in small, beautiful little boutique hotel in Toronto has done something similar. He's welcomed a local entrepreneur who had like a pizza truck that was, went viral and was super successful in Toronto to open up a full restaurant, right? That's part of the Annex Hotel, but it's obviously, they have a strong partnership. It's independently owned by this gentleman, but I love little stories like that, right? Of hotels, especially when you're, true independent. You don't have to abide by anyone's rules. You can afford to run some tests, almost like a test kitchen situation where you have different chefs kind of pop in for 9 months, a year, whatever it is, see how it works, and then offer something a little bit more serious to the right chef. I think there's more and more of those little concepts again at a much smaller scale that I'm seeing pop up, which is really cool. One I think a quintessential example of like restaurant driving like hotel demand, which is probably unfair because it's very hard to replicate something like this. But I immediately, when I read the story, I immediately thought of the Inn at Little Washington, which isn't too far from me. It's like an hour away from me. I think it's the only like 3 Michelin star restaurant in like at least the Mid Atlantic. But it's literally in for people. People come from all over the world to experience the restaurant, but it's like people think Inn at Little Washington and they think it's in Washington, D.C. It's not. It's in Washington, Virginia, which is like, I don't know, 90 minutes from Washington, D.C., literally in the middle of nowhere. Like you drive past Washington, Virginia, and there's nothing, like literally nothing, right?
Don't blink.
Yeah.
You hope when you book this that people have looked at Google Maps before.
Right.
You hope. But honestly, I've heard many a story. So I went there for my wife's birthday, and my mother. It's like an insanely expensive. Well, by my standards, anyways, like insanely expensive experience. I mean, it's like I think it's like a flat, depending on like when you go, it's like a flat $495 a person or something. Like it's like it's wild. It's like a true experience, right? It might have been $295. I don't know. Anyways, it was expensive. Point being, you drive out there, right? Because there's no like public transportation. There's no train. Like literally, it's like in the middle of nowhere. But you go out there, you go away from the city. It's like a 90-minute drive, and then there's literally nowhere else to stay but like that hotel, or like you could drive and find like a Hampton Inn or something nearby. But because of that, it's a really small property. I think it's only like 24, maybe 30 keys or so. But they command, $2,000 a night rates on top of your, $2,000 meal or whatever it is. And it's just like an incredible experience. And it looks like a wonderful business, but it's got that reputation at least in the DC metro area, where it's like, if you go there, you're going to go there and you're going to stay the night because you're going to have a couple drinks, right? And you're not going to want to drive 90 minutes back to the city. So anyways, beautiful restaurant, highly, highly recommend. And if anyone who listens to the pod happens to be affiliated with Inn at Little Washington, I'd love to come
Jack
back.
and I would love to meet.
All right, guys. Final story of the week for this week. Scott, I want to go to you here first. Hotel guests prioritize trust and loyalty over cost. This was like a really interesting article that Hotel Dive published this week. What I thought was interesting about this piece is the argument that it's making is that price is no longer the primary driver of hotel choice. This is according to a new survey done by Choice Hotels, which said that 83% of travelers say trust is the most important factor in determining whether a stay offers good value, while 73% prioritize a dependable balance of comfort, consistency, and costs. Loyalty programs are playing an increasingly central role in that equation. 64% of respondents say earning rewards enhances the value of their stay, with guests placing greater importance on benefits that are accessible and immediate. People don't want to basically hoard their nights. They want to be able to use their points or their perks immediately during their stay. That shift reflects a broader change in expectations. Travelers want to feel recognized throughout the journey, not just after accumulating points over time. At the property level, small gestures also carry more weight. 75% of respondents said thoughtful touches, such as personalized service or minor perks, have a greater impact on perceived value than standard amenities. However, trust remains fragile. 57% of travelers reported encountering deals that were undermined by hidden fees or inconsistent experiences, highlighting ongoing challenges around transparency. So a lot of different like stats and different angles you could take this in, Scott. But I think what stood out to me most about the piece was that we've been talking a lot about how folks, the mid-tier properties, the more economy brands are kind of stuck here. This story, we'll see about this economy. Maybe things are changing a little bit now, but given the war in Iran and how that's affecting summer travel, but price is no longer the number one driver of hotel choice, again, according to this study, which means that consumers are being pickier. They are being more discerning about where they want to spend their money and the kind of property they want to stay in and what their expectations are at that property during the stay. What did you think about this piece? If value is increasingly defined by trust and recognition and not price, are loyalty programs evolving fast enough to meet the traveler where they're at today, or are they still kind of built for, I don't know, a tired, as you would say, a dinosaur traveler that no longer exists?
I think this goes back to what we were just talking about. The industry just moves slow. I mean, this is not, it feels like you just read a story from like 10 years ago, because the loyalty shift, it's not really about loyalty programs. It's about recognition. People don't want points. They want to feel known. They want friction removed. They want someone to say, we see you, we remember you, like, and the 50%, 7% calling out the hidden fees should embarrass the entire industry. That's not a strategy problem. It's a trust problem. And the trust is way harder to rebuild than revenue. The industry is confusing loyalty with retention mechanics. Real loyalty is built through trust, consistency, personalization, not points. Most loyalty programs are just discount systems pretending to be relationships. Trust isn't a marketing message, it's an operational decision. Recognition is the new loyalty.
Well said. Well said. Very much aligns selfishly with what we're trying to do at Journey, but I'll save that for another time. Edwin, what do you think about the story?
So I don't want to be too controversial, but is this another
Be controversial? That's what it's all about.
No, this week. I mean, is this another marketing article of choice? I mean, what's 2,100 surveyed people? Probably their own guests.
Yeah, exactly.
Who would say, I value. I'm not looking at price alone anymore. Well, no, you can't, because there's so much offering at the moment in the world. But TripAdvisor, when was that? When did that start? In the year 2000. Between 2005 and 2015, what did you do? You went to a city, if you're looking at for a budget or mid-tier hotel, what do? You don't look at price, you look at value for money. These stats are built on there. And this is how we chose hotels. When Booking.com brings in their reviews and their value for money and their, that's a trust part, right? Guests have been doing this for, like Scott said, for a long time, but this is nothing new. I mean, these platforms on Expedia, on Booking.com, on TripAdvisor, they've always been about trusting peers and trusting other people's telling you and not necessarily only looking at price, right? If you're just looking at price, I mean, if you have a budget, everybody has a budget, right? So if you have a budget of 100, you go to one of these sites and say, this is my budget. And don't tell me then all of a sudden, because you trust the Four Seasons more than choice, you'll take the Four Seasons. That's not how the world works, right? You just choose the one that on one of these platforms tells you where are the best reviews, what's the best value for money, what's the few things that I'm really keen on for my stay. And that trust factor and that balance has always been there. So I'm not too I didn't see the highlight of the story in that sense that this was groundbreaking news, just like Scott and you just said.
What I thought was interesting about it was this shift, and they talked about this in there was like a related article. It was not kind of the thesis of the piece, but they were talking about how travelers. There is a traveler that goes to a Booking.com or an Airbnb.com or an Expedia.com, and the first thing that they do is they go to filters, right? And they filter by price, right? So they set the max budget. So what I thought was interesting about this,
and by point, right? And you filter the 8, right? Because below 8 you don't want it. So that's trust. Sorry to interrupt.
No, 100%, right? But I think right, like what I took away from this was that. And maybe this is some hallucination on my end, and I'm happy to admit to that if so. But is that there's this trend where, and I'm seeing this too, even with my friends who are maybe a little bit more like, I will treat myself and I will spend too much when I travel because I love it and I like cool hotels and homes. I've got a lot of friends who are successful in their own right. That's not their standard way of booking travel. They could care less about like the hotel. They just want to be near a something cool or whatever it is, right? But what I am seeing is this kind of shift from starting with the filters, right? And I think that this actually is like it's just because of how we how AI is transforming how we search, et cetera. Is it's starting much more with like a desire or like a hope or a dream, or Scott, what you were saying earlier, inspiration of some sort, rather than the default being like pick your price. Like that used to be way more central on these booking platforms than it is even today. Like it's obviously there, but filters used to be very, very, very prominent. Now you click into a button and then you add your filters, right? But like I think that what I took away from this piece is, where the trust comes in is like once you kind of have a sense of like what you want or what you're looking for in a location or an experience, then the brand or the loyalty program or whatever it is that trust signal like layered on top, versus it being like, I'm just going to go find the $150 hotel that I want to stay in. And the way that I'm going to tell the booking platform that this is what I want is the very first thing that I do when I land on the page and type in a location is I'm going to adjust that pricing filter. So that's kind of what I took away from it. But again, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. I am seeing, I think we are seeing this in kind of consumer reports more generally on price, being a factor, but like not the most significant influencer in why someone decides to go somewhere. But yeah. Or maybe I just really got hyped about it because it was talking about how loyalty programs need to be disrupted and reimagined. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So that's probably what really made me subliminally want to get excited about this story. All right, guys, last couple of minutes here. Let's go to Spice of the Week. Edwin, let's go to you first, sir, before we wrap up the pod. What is your Spice of the Week?
So I just want to recognize the things that we don't necessarily hear all around the world. I mean, with the war in the Middle East, we're talking about the prices of fertilizer and the prices of gas, which is a real thing for all of us. But I said it, I think about 5 episodes ago, we had a bit of a shout out to people who were having a difficult time in the Middle East for very different reasons at the time. But there are hotels closing. I mean, Jumeirah is closing 4 out of their 7 hotels. Summer's coming. That's when the low season's up. The area is empty. There are very few rules in place to protect employees. So just in that region, that's 100,000 jobs gone. Wow. I have a friend who's in Kuwait, very good owner. He said, we'll stick it out, but you can't get in and out of Kuwait. You have to go through Saudi because the airport's been bombed. So I just wanted to do a shout out to all those hoteliers who are going through difficult, very complicated times. To all those employees, I mean, imagine if you are Indian or Bangladeshi, that's a big source market for the hotels in Dubai. The Europeans a big source market, and you've just been sent home, and you go back to your home country, and you're now out of a job. But I also want to think about how do we rebuild this? There's so hard to find great staff. If 100,000 jobs in the Middle East that are not going to be filled by locals. So how do we rebuild this likely only post low season? So this is towards Q3 probably. Imagine the recruitment drives those hotels are going to have to do in source countries, to find 100,000 people. That's maybe 500,000 interviews. That's 500,000 interviews in different countries. So, we in the rest of the world, we have our own problems. I get it. And we still talk about ADR increases and, are you getting your fair share? And those are all real things. Sometimes it's just good to remember there are stories you don't hear in the news because of the situation in the world. And that's hoteliers, our business, hoteliers, who are going through a very, very complicated time at the moment, having to make decisions that they never thought they would have.
Well said. Yeah, and our hearts, of course, go out to all those, especially in working in hospitality in these really, really, really challenging times. I genuinely could not imagine. Scott, what about you, man? Spice of the week?
Yeah. And I just want to jump on what Edwin said. I have lots of friends in the Middle East that are going through incredible. I mean, we could spend a whole episode just talking about the stories, but I mean, it's really, really bad. So our thoughts and prayers are with these guys. So for me, again, it's just sort of like I'm beating a dead drum. You know, I want to talk about the death of the hotel brand as we know it. You know, let's stop pretending that this isn't happening. Hotel brands they're losing relevance. They're not slowing, not maybe. It's already happening, and it's happening right in front of us. Ask a traveler today how they picked their last trip. They're not saying I chose Marriott, I chose Hilton. They're saying I saw this insane hotel on Instagram. TikTok showed me this place. I asked ChatGPT where I should go. You know, that's the shift. And the brand used to be the starting point. Now it's just a checkbox at the end. And here's what's, you know, weird and uncomfortable. The power has moved from brands to the platforms and individuals. Creators are driving demand. Algorithms are shaping perception, whether you like it or not. AI is curating options. The hotel is just one of many choices being presented. So what does that mean? It means that your brand name doesn't carry the weight that it used to. Distribution still matters. Loyalty still matters-ish. But neither of those create desire anymore. Desire is created through storytelling, through visibility, through emotion. And most hotel brands are terrible at that. They're still posting polished photos with zero personality, zero edge, zero reason to care. Meanwhile, a 24-year-old creator with an iPhone is selling out properties because they understand attention. And here's the part that nobody wants to say out loud. Guests don't trust brands as much as they trust people. They trust what they see in real time, what feels raw, what feels honest. That's why trust is replacing price. That's why discovery is happening outside your ecosystem. That's why food, experience, and storytelling are becoming the front door. So basically, if you're a hotel brand right now, you've got two choices. You either become a media company that creates demand or slowly become invisible while somebody else tells the story for you, because you're not controlling the narrative anymore. You're not controlling the revenue. You know, hotel brands aren't dead, but their influence is.
Yeah, or you just license the storytelling to somebody else, and you rent other storytellers for a period of time, and you see how long that lasts. Yeah, well said. I was thinking about, as you were talking, Scott, my own, like with the role loyalty plays, the role that these brands might play in the future. And I think if I'm being like radically honest about my own travel like behavior, it also is like usually I find some cool property on Instagram or something like that. But what I find is that when I see that it is a part of a loyalty program of some sort that I'm a part of, it is like the reinforcement that, oh yeah, okay, yes, I definitely will book this, right?
Because you're double dipping.
I find the property, right? I'm like, oh, this is a really cool property, and if it's attached to a brand or that I have affinity for, it makes the decision to go there like even easier. But to your point, which I think is the critical caveat, is that my decision, like I'm not starting on Marriott.com. And deciding to filter to Lisbon and see what properties it is the social discovery, but the role the brand plays, the loyalty program plays. If I can get more bang for my buck, and or if I can use my perks at a property I already want to go to, it just influences me in a much more significant way to actually then go and book that. So
it's just not at the top of the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, which is interesting. Well, guys, hey, this has been another wonderful episode of This Week in Hospitality. We miss you, Ben. Hope you are getting better. We will see you next week. We've already got lots of stories that didn't make it into the agenda for this week that we'll talk about next week, guys. But really appreciate everyone's time. Scott, Edwin, have a wonderful week, gents and listeners. If you haven't already done so, please hit subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about the show. Send us a DM. We're getting more and more DMs from listeners every week, which is always really, really fun and exciting. But keep letting us know what you think about the pod. Give us tips. If you got tips, if you got some juice, if you've got some gossip, we want to hear it. But thanks for tuning in.
Who's going to buy Rosewood?
Who's going to buy Rosewood? Yeah, give us an insider knowledge, guys. But appreciate the time, gentlemen, and we will see you all next time. Thanks for joining us this week. If any part of today's conversation sparked an idea or helped you think differently about the industry, we'd love to continue the conversation. You can find each of us on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram, or whatever your preferred social platform of choice is. Links to all of our profiles are in the show notes below. This Week in Hospitality is presented by Journey. Journey is a loyalty platform built specifically for independent boutique hotels and high-touch hospitality brands. Our mission is to give operators the same powerful rewards engine, data intelligence, and guest insights that major chains rely on, without asking them to give up the individuality, the soul, and the story that makes their property so exceptional. At a moment when travelers are craving unique, meaningful experiences and operators are navigating rising OTA costs, fragmented data, and shifting expectations, Journey provides a unified ecosystem that strengthens guest relationships, increases direct bookings, and helps independent properties thrive on their own terms. We're building a global, curated alliance of exceptional hotels, villas, and residences, a network that rewards exploration, empowers individuality, and gives independents the scale that they deserve. If you're an owner or operator of an extraordinary independently owned and operated hotel or residence, and if you want to see whether your property is a fit for the Journey Alliance, you can learn more and apply at alliance.journey.com. All right, friends, we'll see you next Friday. Until then, keep building experiences that are worth remembering.